How to drop in on a skateboard. So learning how to drop in is sort of a rite of passage for skaters, which can open up an entirely new world of skating. And while skating down a ramp can seem like a pretty simple concept, once you get up to the top and look down for your very first time, it can be pretty scary if you don't know what you're doing. So I'm going to go over a few tips that will hopefully help you build the confidence to go and learn how to drop in. So first off, let's talk about where you're going to put your feet. Your back foot is going to start off pretty much square on the tail, not too far off towards the edge or towards your bolts. And you're going to start with pretty much all your weight on that back foot. And your front foot is going to go right above your front bolts, ready to press down. A few things you want to make sure you're not doing are putting your back foot too far towards the edge of the tail, putting your front foot too far down towards the center, or putting your front foot too far up towards the nose. So basically, when you go to drop in, you're going to start off with your weight pressed down on the tail on the edge of the coping, and your back wheels hanging over the edge, with your front foot above your front bolts. Now let's talk about a few of the things you're actually going to need to do with your body and your feet in order to not die when you're dropping in. Now some of these may seem stupid, but I'm assuming you're a complete beginner who's never dropped in before. So I'm going to be showing a lot of these practice steps on curbs or little hills at first. So the first thing you want to be comfortable with is standing with all your weight on your back foot on the tail, and then pressing down and dropping the nose with your front foot. You can practice getting the feeling for this on a curb or a driveway, or even on flat ground if you don't have any hills. But the main things we want to be focusing on is how you shift your body weight and how fast you press the nose down. So a lot of dropping in actually comes from your upper body. When you press your nose down, you want to make sure that your upper body isn't leaning too far back, because this will cause you to slip out once you drop in. But of course, you also want to make sure that you're not just going completely stiff and leaning too far forward, because you'll probably end up doing a nosedive and falling straight to the ground. This is where practicing on a little hill can help, because you'll know right away if you're leaning too far one way or the other, and then you can adjust and find the sweet spot right in the middle. Now, of course, dropping in on a driveway or a curb isn't really going to be anything like dropping in on a ramp, but that was just to give you the absolute basics of what you'll need to know first. So for the next part, because you're already learning how to drop in, I'm going to assume that you have access to a skate park, which hopefully has a few little ramps and banks that you can practice on. So first, I would say practice by just rolling down a few of these ramps. It may seem dumb, but this is actually helping you learn how to shift your weight. And if you do have some sort of straight bank like this one at your skate park, it can be extremely helpful to learn dropping in on these first. And finally, if you're not really used to the feeling of transition, I would suggest finding a bowl or a mini ramp and rolling back and forth a few times just to see what it feels like. So hopefully after doing all that, you've gotten a little more comfortable with what it feels like to go down a ramp. And even if you didn't notice, your body has probably internalized just a little bit what it needs to do in terms of shifting your weight forward and back when you're rolling down something. So now it's time to actually go to the top of the ramp, set your board down, and get ready to drop in. So earlier I mentioned how you shouldn't just go all stiff and fall forward, so I'm going to try to show you what you should be doing with your upper body. Basically, you can see the way that my weight shifts as I start to lean forward. I pretty much try to keep the board level as I lean forward with my upper body, and as my head starts to come forward over my board, my front leg starts to bend, and finally I let my front foot come down until it finds the ramp. Also, after all of my wheels have touched the ramp and I'm rolling down, as the ramp starts to flatten out, I balance my weight out evenly between my 2 feet, and I also press down a little bit. So if you have that all down, then you should be able to put it together into one fluid movement. So I know that just telling you how to drop in and actually dropping in are two very different things, and when you're actually going to do it, it can be pretty scary. So I think that the best way to actually learn this one is to just go out and try it, and maybe find yourself a nice little ramp between 3 and 5 feet tall. And definitely at least wear a helmet for this one if you've never done it before, because looking cool is not a good excuse for brain damage. So here's a quick recap of what I think are the most important parts when it comes to dropping in. Keep your back foot a good amount on the tail and not too far off the edge, and keep your front foot over the bolts. Make sure that when you're ready to actually drop in, you're not leaving your body weight too far back or slamming down on the nose. Keep in mind that when you lean forward, you're not just standing stiff and falling forward, but you're actually bending your front knee and leaning your upper body first and then pressing down your wheels. And as you roll down the ramp, balance your weight back out between your 2 legs. So technically speaking, dropping in is pretty simple because you're just riding down a ramp. It's one of those things in skateboarding that's way more a mental game than it is physical. But by practicing rolling down a few ramps and maybe riding in transition a little, you should hopefully be able to gain the confidence that it takes to learn this one. So good luck and have fun. And remember that if you don't feel comfortable, at least put the helmet on until you start to get it down. So as always, I'd like to thank my wonderful Patreon pledgers for keeping it real. And I'd like to thank you for watching, and you can like and subscribe if you want.